The people of Earth had been through many attacks by the kaiju, but Godzilla saved them from the attacking kaiju. First in 2014 with the Mutos, and now in 2019, the evil kaiju King Ghidorah had began its attack on mankind. But with the help of Mothra and the military, Godzilla defeated and killed King Ghidorah. After King Ghidorah died, the other kaiju bowed down before Godzilla, addressing to everything and everyone that Godzilla was indeed the king of the monsters. After this, Godzilla changed. Over time, he became more aggressive. He started to not care about the people and eventually started to kill them. It had been about 10 years since King Ghidorah's death, and that's when Godzilla attacked and destroyed his first city. The people of Earth didn't understand why Godzilla was attacking and killing them, until eventually a scientist figured out that humans were the threat to Earth, and that Godzilla wouldn't stop until every human on the planet was dead. Godzilla went on rampage after rampage, until the people finally had enough and decided that Godzilla had to die. The military developed a new weapon thousands of times stronger than the oxygen bomb used years earlier, and they were sure that this was enough to kill him. But what the military and people of Earth were unaware of was that almost every kaiju on the planet submitted before Godzilla, and he was their king. Eventually, the military loaded the weapon and shot it at Godzilla when they thought he was at his most vulnerable, which was when he was resting and consuming radiation. They fired the weapon at Godzilla, and it destroyed everything in the surrounding area. The people of Earth thought they had won, but were horrified when Godzilla rose from the sea, unharmed. Godzilla then roared so loudly it could be heard all across the planet. Then every kaiju that acknowledged Godzilla as their king came to his aid. The military was shocked when not just the ones they knew about, but dozens of kaiju they didn't even know existed came to Godzilla's aid. Their king then roared once more and sent them off to destroy humanity. Eventually, there were dozens of kaiju attacking dozens of cities all across the planet, killing millions of people. There was nothing the military could do. Eventually, after weeks of constant attacks, all governments across the planet fell, and civilization as we knew was over. At this point, billions of people were dead, but Godzilla and his army of minion kaiju wouldn't stop or rest until every last human was dead. After years of endless death and destruction, the human population was only in the hundreds. They thought they were safe in the bunkers that Monarch had built, but then, one by one, the bunkers were found by the kaiju, and with it, all the humans who survived in them were killed, until eventually, there were no bunkers remaining. Godzilla finally thought that every human was dead, but one day, Skull Island was discovered by the kaijus. So Godzilla commanded one of the kaiju to go and finish off the last of the human population. But when the kaiju didn't return, Godzilla knew something was off. So he went there himself to finish off humanity. But when Godzilla started to walk onto the shores, he saw one of, if not the only kaiju that didn't submit to him and acknowledge him as king. It was Kong. Godzilla roared and called his kaiju to him. But at that moment, the battle of God versus King was finally about to unfold. Kong appeared in front of Godzilla, ready to protect his home. and kill whoever endangered it. Godzilla stared fiercely at Kong, enraged that he did not acknowledge him as his king. Godzilla roared, commanding the other kaiju to attack Kong. A Muto then came flying in to attack Kong. It tried to ram into him, but Kong stopped it and grabbed its head. He then ripped off the Muto's head with brute strength, killing the Muto instantly. This somewhat surprised Godzilla, but he sent in another kaiju. It was the same exact result. No matter what kaiju Godzilla sent in, Kong easily killed them all. Then Godzilla had enough of this, and he decided to kill Kong himself. And now, the real battle between God and King was about to unfold. Godzilla prepared his atomic breath and fired it at Kong. Luckily, Kong dodged it, and he picked up a tree. Kong then ran towards Godzilla, slamming the large tree into Godzilla's side. Godzilla then swiped his tail at Kong, which sent him staggering back a bit. Kong gathered his bearings and ran at Godzilla once more, punching the large lizard square in the jaw. Godzilla fell back and onto the ground. Kong then repeatedly kicked Godzilla over and over. This angered Godzilla, and so he prepared another atomic breath and shot it straight at Kong, somewhat injuring him. Kong knew Godzilla had to die, so he grabbed two more large trees, swiping all the leaves off them and breaking the tops, turning them into gigantic wooden stakes. Godzilla then started to prepare another atomic breath, but this was the chance Kong was looking for. Kong ran towards Godzilla with ferocious speed. Kong then jumped into the air and threw one of the large wooden stakes directly into Godzilla's heart. But this was still not enough to kill him. Godzilla's atomic breath was ready, and so he fired directly into Kong's chest. But Kong endured it, knowing that he had to kill Godzilla. Godzilla kept firing his atomic breath, but Kong kept pushing through it, until eventually Kong was right in front of Godzilla. He then used the second large wooden stake and stabbed Godzilla directly in the head. But Kong didn't stop there. He grabbed Godzilla's jaw, which was still partially firing his atomic breath, and he ripped it wide open. And with this, Godzilla was finally dead. Kong was victorious, but he was severely injured, and he succumbed to his injuries, falling over next to Godzilla's corpse and died, knowing he saved his home. And with that, the battle of God versus King was finally over. Not everybody had died. There were still some remnants of humanity left that had survived in monarch bunkers that Godzilla and the other kaiju didn't find. And after Godzilla's death, the kaiju didn't know what to do. So they fought each other for dominance. And most of them killed each other in the process. But the ones that lived went back into hiding, and where they were previously before they were awoken. And that gave humanity the chance to repopulate the earth and rebuild what had been destroyed. And after about 1,000 years, humanity was back to normal. History had told tales about how humanity was almost annihilated by a giant reptilian monster and its army of kaiju. In the millennia that had passed, humanity had grown substantially, technologically wise, and they were much more advanced than when they were destroyed. And so, overall, humanity was flourishing. But something was coming. Something that wanted to destroy them all. It was Godzilla. His corpse on Skull Island had not yet fully decayed. And so, about 500 years after humanity had started to rebuild and repopulate the earth, Godzilla's spirit entered his body and began to swim into the depths of the ocean to heal. And after 500 years of healing, Godzilla wanted his revenge. He was going to kill every last human. And so, Godzilla struck. He attacked a city and began destroying it. He toppled buildings, crushed innocent people, and brought death and destruction with him. And within only a few hours, Godzilla had annihilated the entire city and had killed millions. But this time, humanity was ready. They had remembered the history that they had been taught, that a giant reptilian monster had almost annihilated them. And so, they built something to combat it if it ever came back. And that something was Mecha Godzilla. After Godzilla had destroyed the city, the new government unleashed Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla flew into the destroyed city and landed right before Godzilla. And Godzilla stared down the mechanical monstrosity, ready to destroy it. And the pilots of Mechagodzilla were ready to end him once and for all. And to make sure, this time, he stayed dead. Godzilla stared at Mechagodzilla, and the pilots of the mechanical beast knew it was time to attack. Mechagodzilla started to run towards Godzilla, and in response to this, Godzilla used his tail to swipe the air and eventually hit Mechagodzilla, which sent the mechanical monstrosity flying into some destroyed buildings. The mech got up and shot multiple rockets from its back, sending them flying towards Godzilla. Godzilla, in response to this, crossed his arms, bracing himself for the impending explosion. The rockets hit Godzilla, but they barely did anything. and Godzilla easily walked it off. The pilots of the mech knew they had to up their game if they wanted to kill Godzilla. So, they raised Mechagodzilla's arm and unleashed a powerful minigun, sending thousands upon thousands of multiple powerful bullets to Godzilla. But Godzilla took them head on, and he started to slowly walk towards Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla raised its other arm and unleashed another minigun, now doubling its firepower. But still, Godzilla took it full force, like it was nothing. Eventually, the pilots realized that this wasn't doing anything, and they started to load up a blast that would be shot from Mechagodzilla's eyes. Once it fully loaded, the pilots unleashed the eye blast onto Godzilla. But Godzilla blocked the blast with one arm and continued to slowly walk towards Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla kept firing its eye blast, and eventually Godzilla reached the mech. As Mechagodzilla continued to unleash its eye blast, Godzilla used his arm, continued to block it, until they were face to face, and the pilots now realizing they had to stop the eye blast, or else the mech would explode. The eye blast stopped, and Godzilla used his fist and tried to punch Mechagodzilla. But the pilots were able to maneuver its body so Mechagodzilla could dodge. As Mechagodzilla dodged, Godzilla's punch destroyed what was left of a building behind it. Then, Mechagodzilla used its rockets that was inside the feet of the mechanical beast and started to fly into the air and started to ready its own atomic breath. This was going to be the final stand. In response to this, Godzilla readied his own atomic breath, and the two opposing Godzillas unleashed their blast onto one another, with the blasts reaching one another and colliding with an even amount of force. But eventually, Godzilla unleashed more of his blast, which engulfed Mechagodzilla's atomic breath, and eventually engulfed Mechagodzilla as well, and its pilots. And so, Godzilla had finally destroyed Mechagodzilla, and afterwards, Godzilla remained supreme as king of the monsters, ready to finally kill every human on the planet. Godzilla had killed and destroyed anything that got in his way. He killed Kong, but was killed as a result, and then brought back to life. And now he destroyed Mechagodzilla. The humans were in shock. They didn't know what to think. Mechagodzilla was their most powerful creation, and Godzilla had destroyed it, and he was still alive. They knew that normal means of trying to destroy Godzilla, such as a nuke, wouldn't do anything to him. Godzilla walked away from the destruction he had caused. The city that Godzilla fought Mechagodzilla in was almost completely destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of people had been killed. Weeks went by and Godzilla continued to rampage, and the people of Earth knew that the tragedy that had struck So long ago, when the human race was almost wiped out entirely, would occur once more. So the leaders of the world came together to try and come up with a solution to end Godzilla once and for all. And they all agreed upon one solution: to build a weapon even more powerful than Mechagodzilla that would be able to kill Godzilla. While this was happening, Godzilla called upon his kaiju, who all thought he was dead, and they came. But since Godzilla was gone for so long, some of the kaiju didn't listen to him, and they started to fight. Two Mutos stared down Godzilla, and they started to come towards him. But Godzilla used his tail and slammed it into one of the heads of the Mutos, which ripped the head off completely, killing one of them. Godzilla then used his hand and grabbed the other Muto's head. The second Muto saw this and started running towards Godzilla, but Godzilla grabbed its head and he used his atomic breath and shot it into the Muto's head, which ultimately killed it. The other kaiju who didn't submit to Godzilla at first saw this and knew they had no chance, and they submitted to their king. Godzilla once more had an army that would listen to whatever he said. And while Godzilla was gathering his army, the humans were building their ultimate weapon. A few months passed, and Godzilla invaded once more. This time, with his kaiju army, they started to attack a city, and that's when they saw something in the distance coming towards them. And Godzilla looked at it, and it seemed familiar to him. When it got closer, Godzilla was angered, and he was ready to destroy it. The machine the humans had built was Mecha Kong. And the humans had also built an army of mechs to take on Godzilla's army, and what was about to occur would be the most devastating battle between Godzilla and humanity that the world had seen. Godzilla just stared at the army of mechs. But more importantly, he stared at Mecha Kong. This was his mortal enemy. He had killed Kong, the only kaiju not to obey him and acknowledge him as the king of the monsters. This would be the final battle. Whoever came out on top would be the victor, and the other one would be eradicated entirely. Godzilla roared, and an army of kaiju appeared at his side, ready to fight once and for all in the final battle for all of humanity. Godzilla roared once more, and the battle started. Godzilla started walking and was speeding towards Mecha Kong, and the pilots activated Mecha Kong and did the exact same. The other kaiju went for the other mechs, and all-out hell ensued. Godzilla used his tail to whip Mecha Kong, but a giant mech managed to block it. It then swung its arm and smacked Godzilla right across the face with a powerful punch that sent Godzilla staggering back a bit. Godzilla, angered by this, ran towards it once more, and this time he bit at its neck, trying to rip its entire head off. But this mech was armored with the most powerful metal in the entire world, and it was practically indestructible. Godzilla then started to prepare an atomic breath to shoot and hit point blank in the face of Mecha Kong. But the pilots were prepared for this, and the mech used both of its arms to grab Godzilla's jaw. And just in time, the mech pointed Godzilla's jaw toward the sky, and with that, the beam of radiation was sent into the clouds. While Godzilla was busy fighting Mecha Kong, the other kaiju were losing to the army of mechs. One by one, kaiju would die, and the mechs lost a few, but they still outnumbered the kaiju, and they were being killed off one by one. Eventually, the entirety of Godzilla's army was killed, and he was the only kaiju left. But the kaiju to Godzilla were nothing, and this only enraged him even more. And he wanted to kill not only the humans, but everything on this planet, humans and kaiju alike. He was glad that they were dead. Eventually, he was going to do it himself. Godzilla wasn't king of the monsters anymore. He was just going to be the only monster in existence. Godzilla smacked his tail into the mech, causing it to stagger back a bit, and then he released his most powerful atomic breath he had ever blasted on to the army of mechs. Instantly, almost 95% of the entire mech army was annihilated, and the pilots inside of them were vaporized along with their mechs. But Godzilla now knew it was time to end this. He was done playing games. At this point, Mecha Kong got up, and the pilots in this were ready to end this once and for all as well. But all of a sudden, Mecha Kong started to malfunction, and the pilots couldn't control the mech. It was as if something else was controlling it entirely, and within a couple of seconds, the pilots could do nothing, and they were trapped inside the mech, while something else controlled it. And that something else was the spirit of the real Kong. Godzilla sensed that Kong was in control, and this only angered him even more, and he would send Kong to the afterlife once more. Godzilla then started to prepare another atomic breath, and this even more powerful than the last. And Kong did the same, but this time it was in his chest, or rather, the mech's chest, and he unleashed the beam, as did Godzilla. What ensued was a massive beam struggle, Godzilla trying to get the upper hand, as well as Mecha Kong, or rather, the spirit of the real Kong inside Mecha Kong. Both were even, until Godzilla upped the ante even more, releasing even more radiation, making his beam more powerful. And this started to overcome the spirit of Kong's beam. But that's when the few mechs that were left joined in the beam struggle as well, unleashing their beams from the palm of the mech's hands, and collided and somehow merged with Mecha Kong's beam. And with this, it was enough. The beam was powerful enough, and it cancelled out Godzilla's atomic breath. But with this, Godzilla was worn out, and this was now their opportunity. Mecha Kong ran towards Godzilla, and once again, Godzilla was trying to prepare another atomic breath. But Mecha Kong used his opportunity to grab Godzilla's jaw and rip it apart, resulting in the death of Godzilla, the king, or more rather, the god of all monsters. After the death of Godzilla, the humans celebrated all across the planet, And then they started to rebuild. And eventually, after hundreds of years, the human population had bounced back into the billions. And Earth was now free from the tyrant known as Godzilla.